welcome back to ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidel here on a given Friday afternoon in the state of energy. We're here with Duane Shimogawa. He's a reporter, star reporter, in my opinion, with Pacific Business News, and Ethan Allen, who is the host of Likable Science, that just finished his show about energy and bicycles. And he hadn't anything to do, so he kind of hung around, wanted to be involved. Thank you, Ethan.
All right. But you really wanted to be here, right? Yeah. Good to have you.
Yeah. So, I mean, and to join the mix, of course, our star witness, as the case may be, who this time is in Tibet. Lhasa?
Yeah.
Is it Lhasa?
Yes, it is, and very warm Tashi Dele, which is the typical greeting in Tibetan here. I'm here in Lhasa, which is the capital of the Tibet Autonomous Region here.
If you don't recognize that voice, it's Marco Mangelsdorf of Provision Solar in Hilo and everywhere.
Basically, apparently.
You know, Provision Solar coming to a continent near you.
Maybe that's what he's doing over there. He's expanding. I mean, hey, it's a business thing.
So let's start with why you're in Tibet. And what you're doing there, and what we can learn from energy and commerce in Tibet and Lhasa.
Well, gee, we could spend a whole show on that, Jay. I've had a chance to come visit a number of times and have developed a real affinity for the Tibetan people. And I can tell you my impressions this particular trip are, I'm really struck by the contrast and the juxtaposition between the modernity of 21st century consumerism. What I mean by that is right across from my hotel, there's a fairly recently finished shopping mall of 6 levels. They call it Times Square. There is a great big television at the entrance, which shows various things that are being promoted. And I took a stroll up and down from top to bottom at Times Square yesterday, and I was struck by how I could have easily been in Shanghai, where I was just a few days ago, or San Francisco, or somewhere in Europe, or New York City, in terms of the selection of name brand clothes and other electronic gizmos. There was a shop that was selling top of the line Samsung and Apple products. So here I was getting my taste of modern Tibet, which rivals anywhere in the so-called developed world, and yet less than half a mile away, there are nomads and pilgrims that come from all over the area doing their circumambulations around the Jokong Temple, which is one of the most holy sites in Tibet, where people come from literally 1,000 or more miles away to be able to do their prostrations, full-body prostrations around this 15, 20-minute circuit around the Jokong Temple.
Yeah,
so
Tibet is a very
really
strong Buddhist sect in Tibet, different from other places in the area.
Yes, Buddhism really is the foundation of society here, and has been for, many hundreds of years. So even though there's been dramatic change over the past 50 or 60 years in a lot of development, and especially in the outskirts of the city, where the national bird of the People's Republic of China seems to be the crane, not the crane that flies, but the crane that builds multi-story buildings. So there's a tremendous amount of construction going on across China, including Tibet. So it's the juxtaposition of a very old society and culture versus the modernity of development and consumerism. So it's really quite striking.
So how about the electricity? You have enough electricity to run your, consumer electrical appliances?
Think hydropower, Jay, hydropower. They have a surplus of hydro here on the Tibetan plateau, and they export it across the Chinese mainland.
Interesting. You took the train up to Tibet, that fancy train the Chinese built?
No, I haven't taken that train that's been around since, I believe it is 2006. I find that my kind of marathon train trips disappeared during my Euro adventures in my 20s. I don't seem to have as much leisure time to take multi-day train trips. So I flew from Shanghai, and it's all told, it's about a 5.5 hour flight.
Well, Well, one more question about Tibet is that have you gotten a chance to meet and say hi to the Dalai Lama just yet?
Well, Jay, he hasn't been here since 1959. He's been living in, well, he's obviously a citizen of the world,
I
but
knew
he
that.
has not.
In fact, he lives in a town in India where all his followers followed him, right? And
Yes.
he runs the shop from there, travels the world from there, and he hasn't been in Tibet in a long time because if he went to Tibet, there'd be big problems with the Chinese. Okay. Well, that's it then.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, Duane. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Marco. You know, I know it's the oddest thing in the world to reach you in Tibet across the street from the big Times Square shopping center, but and then to talk about energy in Hawaii. But why not? It's a global village, right? So we can do that. So we should talk about some of the bills, the remarkable bills that are pending in the legislature and see how they affect things. And one is a bill I didn't know that Duane mentioned when he came in. I don't know if you know about this, Marco. There's a bill for bonds.
Yeah, special purpose revenue bonds, and you know they're looking for some help with their capital projects, and they've estimated that in 2016 and 2017 they got about 800 million of capital projects that they have to do, and that's one of the reasons why they say Nextera makes sense, to take over Hawaiian Electric, because they have deeper pockets, bigger company, and so that kind of plays into the whole approval of the merger. That talk, gets a little bit more attractive when you're talking about, this is what we face. I mean, who's gonna pay for this? Ultimately, I hate to say it, but the ratepayers, maybe not all of that, but a bulk of that, and through our rates.
Actually, it gets more interesting when you consider the fact that these revenue bonds, what do you call special purpose revenue bonds, are guaranteed by the state.
Right.
That's why they go to the legislature, get a guarantee, and that helps them sell the bonds. But at the same time, I saw something in print about this recently. At the same time, we've been lulled into this notion of special purpose revenue bonds for everybody who comes down the pike.
Right.
They have bucks, but there are other companies that get hundreds of millions of dollars of these bonds. Okay, at the end of the day, if they fail, guess who gets to pay for these bonds?
It's us. And it's a risk that the state is taking, and they're gambling with our money, and this is the opportunity for us to say, hey, wait a second, we need to really think about this. I mean, because in the end, again, we're paying for it, and we'll lose out if that project or that effort doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
And it's happened before, and it'll happen again.
Yeah, this could be, and the amount of money involved is huge.
Yeah.
It's an interesting strategical move, don't you think, that they come in and say, we have tons of resources, we can handle any project, any size, and then bingo, they're in the legislature. At the same time, they're trying to make friends all over town.
Right.
But the legislature is giving them another bill, which Marco, you tipped me off on this one. This is the
House
bill.
Resolution 158.
It's a House resolution it's a resolution.
Yeah.
It's HR number 158 HD2, and it is quite remarkable. You want to summarize that for us? From Tibet?
Well, essentially, it's my kind of overall take, Jay, is that it's an effort on the part of the House, in this case, because as far as I know, I haven't seen any Senate resolutions yet, as the legislative session is winding down for this session. But the House certainly has been involved, and it's an effort on the House's part to try to make a state for them, make a claim that they're relevant, that the Hawaii House of Representatives has a role to play in this proposed merger, and their heart is certainly in the right place, but to what extent it's something substantive as opposed to more declarative and kind of a feel-good thing, remains to be seen. My hit in reading that resolution is that they were essentially telling the PUC what the PUC is expected to do anyway. So while I certainly appreciate their motives and their desire to try to make sure that as this merger docket is considered by the Public Utilities Commission and the Consumer Advocate, who I think, a lot of people don't talk about what Jeff Ono is doing, but he's also playing a very vital role. If the Consumer Advocate were to come out opposed to the merger, that would be a big deal. Now, it wouldn't be as big a deal as the commissioners deciding to nix it, but in our state, the Consumer Advocate has quite a bit of gravitas. So, I think it's an effort on the part of the House to try to be relevant and to try to make sure that doubly, triply, quadruply sure that the PUC is going to be doing their utmost to scrutinize this from every angle, make sure it is truly in the best interest of Hawaii residents.
Well, there you have it, in a very kindly way, I'd say. Duane, what are your thoughts on this?
I agree with Marco, after kind of glancing over, this is the first time I've seen it actually. It's just posturing and trying to make themselves sound relevant and that they're important and that they're part of the discussion and, trying to impose their will on the PUC. And the interesting thing is that, it come down to, the House and the Senate. I mean, they're the ones that approved, Randy Iwase and all the commissioners. So, for them to come out and with this type of, strong statement, I think that, it's kind of bordering on the line of maybe they don't have that much confidence in Iwase and the rest of the commission to make the right decision in the public interest. So I think it kind of says a little bit about the confidence that they have in Randy Iwase as chair of the PUC. They should be confident in him and in Jeff Ono, the consumer advocate, as well.
Yeah. So Ethan, you're not as close to this as these guys are, but what's your reaction? I don't know if you had a chance to look at this, but it tells the PUC what to think already.
That seems odd because the PUC has clearly a charter they operate under and a set of rules and regulations, and they should presumably know their role, understand their position in things, understand who they're obligated to and what they're obligated to do. So why this has to be reiterated to them isn't exactly clear to me.
Marco, you mentioned that Jeff Ono, as a consumer advocate, would have a lot of influence on the PUC. And I mean, in a hypothetical sense, if he said, I don't think you should approve this deal, or it may be a more complex suggestion, like you should approve it with these conditions and everything, and then the PUC said, we're just going to approve it flat out. We're going to ignore all your conditions. In other words, they took the opposite view of it politically and in the eyes of the public and the press, for that matter. Yeah. The PUC would be out of school because he's the guy that essentially is closest to them, representing the public. If he says something, to protect the public and they ignore him, they do it at their own peril, don't you think?
Yes. It's a very, they have to toe the line and make sure that, they have, Jeff Ono along with them. If they don't and they're split, it's going to be really tough for the PUC to continue on, especially, this arguably is one of the biggest decisions that, they'll make in the rest of their, existence at the PUC. And you can look back, I mean, this is it. This is one of the biggest business decisions that has come, to the PUC's attention in recent memory. And so it's a very important job. I do not envy at all the job that they are supposed to be doing and taking a look at the merger. But again, Jeff Ono is a very key piece in all of this, and I think having him on board, or at least if there are conditions that he brings up, the PUC has to take those into account and has to explain why they're not utilizing or going ahead with the type of ideas or things that he wants to make sure is as part of the merger discussion.
Yeah. So hold that thought, the Jeff Ono scenario that we just discussed, because when we come back from this break, we're going to see how that compares to the scenario here in House Resolution number 158. What happens if the PUC blows off this resolution? How different would that be? And how interesting that would be. We'll be right back. This is Duane Shimogawa and Ethan Allen and me and Marco. Marco joining us from Tibet. He likes to be far away from us. I don't know what it is. Here in the State of Energy, we're calling the show Marco in Tibet. Okay? We'll be right back.
Marco on the move.
Inspired by an ancient culture, classical Chinese dance, vigorous physicality, timeless stories, 5,000 years of Chinese music and dance. Shen Yun presents authentic Chinese culture. Coming to Blaisdell Concert Hall, May 8th and 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com or call 808-792-3919.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
Aloha, my name is Paul Jackson, better known as PJ, and my local interest is in sports. I have my own sports radio show at KWAI AM 1080 that you can stream live. I also have my own website, pjsportsradio.com. We have live guests in studio, and we talk about discussions and topics that everyone wants to know locally here on the islands. We cover everything from surfing to basketball to whatever's going on locally, sports-wise. We try to do our best and cover the topics in depth as much as we can. Once again, thank you for joining PJ here on Hawaii Sports Update. Mahalo.
Live, okay, we're back, we're live, we're here with Duane Shimogawa and Ethan Allen in the State of Energy with Marco in Tibet, which is, I guess, also a different state of energy. Marco, you wanted to comment on the way we left it before the break. What's your thought?
Yes, I'm going to go out on perhaps a bit of a limb and say that realistically, the best case scenario from the perspectives of HEI and our friends in NextEra Energy, Juno Beach, Florida, the best case scenario would be that this proposed merger is approved with modifications and stipulations and conditions. Whether they come from the PUC, which they almost certainly will, whether they also come from Jeff Anna, which they almost certainly will, it'll come down to what degree are those modifications, conditions, stipulations acceptable or not to the HEI board and the NextEra board. And, you know, the kickoff has taken place in the past weeks. We have now voluminous testimony, as in 1,000 or more pages, that's been provided by HEI and NextEra. We have the IRs, the information requests, starting to fly, and you know, the game is underway. And I wanted to see if we could get Duane's hit as to kind of where we stand, whether it's you know, halfway through the first quarter. You know, I think the football analogy is often kind of overused, but you know, we're certainly still more at the beginning of the game than the end of the game. I wanted to get your hit, Duane.
Before you
if you've had a chance to look over some of that stuff.
I want to go back to the question I posed before the break, which is, which we will lose in relevance if we don't attack it now. So have Jeff Ono,
Yeah.
who has a great amount of influence in the PUC, in the legislature, and the public, makes a statement, and then the PUC doesn't go with it. That creates a political problem and a public opinion problem and a media problem. I mean, it will all be revealed. But now this, it runs parallel, don't you think? This resolution, 158, the legislature, which created the PUC in the first place. In fact, I think the PUC may be a constitutional animal, but no matter. The legislature is telling the PUC what to think. They're giving it all kinds of instructions, and I personally cannot remember the legislature doing that before to a, quote, quasi-judicial agency. But for example, if in a given case pending in the First Circuit Court, the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, would make a resolution telling the judge in the First Circuit Court what to think, what to consider, what to do, and by implication, how to rule, because they are quite explicit, really, in their views here. I mean, there's something fishy about that, just only because it hasn't happened.
Right.
And now we have a different situation.
Yeah, it's micromanaging. I mean, they should let the PUC do their job. I mean, that's what they're there for. And, you know, I mean, it's not just those 3 commissioners. They have support staff that's looking through all of these dockets and this most important docket currently before them. And, you know, you kind of wonder as well with you know, resolution like this, the lawmakers are hearing it from their constituents. You know they are, like, especially when it comes down to the rooftop solar customers, afraid of what may happen because they see in Florida, I mean, a drop in the bucket compared to the rooftop solar penetration, you know, here in Hawaii. And so you might say that maybe some of the customers are pressuring their lawmakers in the area to, you know, to really get on the PUC to make sure that they scrutinize this deal.
The solar industry itself.
The solar industry itself has, you know, at least 5 interveners in the case, including, you know, Marco's group is in there as well, looking at it from a, you know, starting their own public utility type of view on the Big Island. And so, you know, there's so many parties involved, and there's so much at stake that, although this seems a bit micromanagement, you can't really fault them though for at least, you know, going over the line and really making sure that the PUC, you know, is doing their job.
I think you're right in the sense that this represents lobbyists, members of the solar industry, whatever, coming in, talking to these legislators and saying, you know, you got to do something.
Yeah.
And then the legislature comes up with this.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that troubles me is it's like a one-handed, you know, this is a one-hand clapping. Let me add that there's a video link floating around of, I don't know if you've seen this, Marco, it's amazing. It's the meeting that Nextera organized in Molokai.
Okay.
They went to Molokai, and they went to the cafetorium, where all important things happen in Molokai. And Molokai was there in force. And Walter Riddy was there in force, and a number of other activists were there in force. And Eric Gleason, the CEO of Nextera, is trying to explain what he wants to do and all this. And then they came at him with hammer and tongue. And I wonder if that was a good move. You know, you can't win a game like that. Sometimes in Hawaii, you can't win. I mean, even the TMT is going to win by its fingernails, I think.
Should we get into that as well?
No.
That's a whole other
But, you know, there's a lot of resistance on this deal.
Yeah.
And,
Tons.
For the legislature to come down on this. Now, so my parallel with Jeff Ono. Suppose the legislature, rather the PUC decided in their infinite wisdom that they didn't buy what the legislature had to say. They were going to ignore large parts of this resolution. What would happen politically? It would be like a bomb.
Yeah, I mean, you would have sort of like a Carlton Ching type of deal where, you know, the next appointment would get scrutinized, and his, you know, in Randy Iwasa's case, this could affect what he, plans or wants to do in the future, as far as a cabinet seat or anything to do with kind of a high-level state job.
Yeah.
Because this is high-stakes gambling here.
High stakes.
And Randy, he's got some years left, but he's not certainly in the prime of his career and trying to advance. So it's actually, a good situation where, he doesn't have kind of like an ulterior motive to move to the next step, and he's gonna really, show that in his rulings, because this is pretty much, I think this is it for him. So
Yeah, this is it for him, and the question is how strong is he in
Yeah.
terms of defending his own turf? I mean, all things be known, he might turn around and say to them, "You guys leave me alone. I'm trying to do my job here. What are you getting away?"
Right. He may say that. I mean, and I think he probably will say that. I mean,
Yeah. But I think your point is the most telling, Duane, is they got to have confidence in the PUC. This has been an ongoing problem. Now you have a new chair.
Right.
Be confident of him.
Yeah, and you go back to his predecessor, Mina Morita, former Governor Abercrombie. I mean, she could not continue because he came out and questioned her abilities, and and she had her little transgressions as well with on Kauai, and so it wasn't all from Abercrombie's perspective. But when you don't show confidence in the people that is supposed to be doing the job that you charge them to do, it's hard for others to trust their decision making as well. So this, to me,
it undermines their credibility.
Yep.
So when they come up with any decision, the people who don't like that decision are going to have plenty of ammunition against them. Is the problem. I would be mighty offended if I were him. But how about you, Marco? How do you feel about this?
Well, I mean, look at it from the perspectives of Randy Iwasa, Lorraine Akiba, and Mike Champley, the three commissioners. They've got before them 2 applicants, HEI and Nextera, 29 interveners, the state legislature, the governor,
Love that word.
public interest groups, individuals who are writing into them, if not on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, usually strongly opposed to the merger. They have, and of course Jeff Ono and the Consumer Advocate, they have got all these parties, thousands and thousands of pages when all is said and done, and they have to try to make sense of that and come up with not so much an up or down vote, because like I said earlier, I'm convinced that there will be modifications, stipulations, conditions required. They've got to make sense of all that information, all these views, and come to some kind of decision. You're absolutely right, Jay. Regardless of how they decide, they are likely to be hammered by multiple parties.
The reason I mentioned the TMT in all of this is I think the TMT, I mean, it is relevant. The TMT is an example demonstrating that we have 2 separate systems going on. We have the rule of law, which gave the TMT a permit, and then we have the noise on the top of the mountain, which is going to forever. It's going to go forever, and it's the people. It's like the guys in Molokai. Do you think that Eric Gleason could have convinced them this is a good project? No, it's not possible. It's not going to happen.
Even if he promised them gold.
Yeah, right. I mean, even if there was money in it for them, I don't think he could have convinced. So now what you have is you have something overlaid on the top of the legal process. You have this whole thing totally politicized. The people on Maui are going, I mean, Molokai are going to be fighting with it. I'm sure that there's a lot of people fighting with it. And they're fighting with it not necessarily on legal grounds. We've talked on the show before about what is the public interest really? What is that? How do you define that? I think it's up to the quasi-judicial agency to define it. But I think since it's so vague, anybody who raises his voice can be heard about what he thinks the public interest is.
It's a member of the public. And,
exactly.
And everybody should have a say. And that's good. I like that. But, like you brought up the TMT project. I mean, you have, the 2 factions, and they'll always be there in Hawaii, right? You go back to the super ferry issue.
Same thing.
I mean, you go back to the GMO issue. That's another thing.
Same thing.
You're never going to satisfy everyone. And that's why we have rules in place, right? And, if a project is approved and you know, and it goes through all of the necessary processes. And I don't see why it shouldn't go on. I mean, that's
Right.
why we make rules. I mean, because
Right.
we don't end up at a standstill for everything and nothing gets done.
Right, that's my article. You don't have to read my article. You just send my article.
Okay, I'll still read it. I've just got a lot more.
So
colorful
you're a
photos.
fair witness on this, Ethan.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, so is this then, are you saying in some sense it's a failure of communication on the parts of some of the leaders of it to frame it properly or sell it properly? Or is it the kind of issue which you cannot frame or sell in a way that's going to have broad appeal? Is it inherently controversial and inherently divisive because of the broad stakeholder groups?
You're touching on some very core issues in the development of our state.
Well, yes, right. And I don't claim to know this. I'm a relative newcomer here, so, but it struck me again. I was just reading a little piece about the TMT and some of the behind-the-scenes work that had gone into trying to be sure that all the factions did come together and understand the value of it, the power of it, the beauty of it, and try to be sure that all the bases got covered, and then that sort of seems to have fallen apart at the end, and a great deal of
One
controversy
last
around
point on that, you know, what the article said was what you said, right? It said, so we have a lot of projects that are stuck.
Yeah.
And they're stuck not because they legally should be stuck, but because they're stuck in this kind of netherland between the rule of law and the rule of public activism, call it. And you know that we got that. That's what we got. More now than ever in the state's history, actually.
Oh yeah.
And so, no, what I ask you guys is, what happens if the PUC, in its wisdom or non-wisdom, decides not to do this deal, or if it issues conditions that are so onerous, or processes that are so, you know, difficult, like these information requests, that NextEra says, sorry
Yeah.
guys, we're packing it up. We can't tolerate this. This doesn't happen anywhere in the world. We're not doing it.
And that would say a lot because they do business, I mean, almost in every state. And so this would be another scar on the state's ability to show that we are a place where you can do serious business.
Right.
And, you know, whether it goes through or not, for whatever reason, you know, NextEra is a very well-known energy company throughout, you could say, the world even. And if the reasoning comes down that you know, they don't want to go through with it anymore, that, you know, Hawaii is just a difficult place to get along and do business with, that could have some huge ramifications for the future.
All those other projects, all those other offshore investors see this happen.
They're going to say,
I'm not touching this one.
I mean, there are many other places they're going to say there are many other places we could do business that, you know, we don't have to deal with, you know, all of these, you know, barriers and, you know, all of these, you know, public hearings and it just goes on and on and on, and it just delays the process. And I mean, even with the rail project, I mean, we could have a whole show and talk for weeks on you know, different examples. But in the end, I mean, you know, it's a huge deal. And so, you know, the other side is that, yeah, we need to take a really, really hard look at these things.
Right.
But there has to be, you know, a line that's drawn and said, okay, we've taken a good enough look. Let's move on. Let's make a decision.
Right.
Yay or nay.
Right.
Let's move on.
Everyone's voices should be heard. All the stakeholders should be properly informed, educated, and eventually, yes, it comes down to we need to decide one way or another.
And once the decision is made, and you don't agree with it,
Right.
then go along, because this, in a democracy, you're
Yeah.
supposed to go
Yeah.
along
Right.
after the decision is
Right.
made.
You can still say, I don't like that decision, I didn't approve of it, but you should still basically play by the game.
Right.
Just respect it.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. Well, now, one interesting point, last point, and I'll get off the stick on this, is that
Yeah.
suppose it is denied or they walk away, right? What happens then?
Wow.
We are in the ghost of Christmas past. The
Well-
whole thing comes back again. All
Well,
the problems come back.
The problems come back, and whether we like it or not, another company will try and come in and buy HECO. It'll be another, maybe Sempra will come in and take over. HECO can't do it alone.
Yeah.
It just there's not enough money here.
Yeah.
Our rates are through the roof already, and you know if they're going to be spending more, our rates are going to go even higher. What's you know fortunate for us is that the price of oil has gone down, so you know we will start to see some relief hopefully this summer as that begins to catch up. But you know in the end, if it's not Nextera, it's going to be company X from the mainland, or you know, it could be maybe not even a domestic company. We could have a Russian company, a Chinese company, and I'll tell you this, be careful what you ask
Careful
for.
with yeah, exactly.
Or, as my last guest pointed out, maybe it could be a fleet of bicycles, right?
Maybe so. We have to change the whole idea.
All of us powering everything in.
Yeah.
But anyone who comes in is going to come in with exactly the same idea. You know, I know we've heard all these stories about
Yeah.
how Hawaii is hard to do business, but we can talk to them.
Yeah.
We'll work it out.
Yeah.
No problemo. We'll go to Molokai and they'll be nice to us. So, Marco, I'm sorry
Yeah.
I interrupted on your question. Why don't you continue? Was it something we said? Why don't you try calling back?
Oh well.
Yeah. What? Yeah, let's go to a short break while we reconnect with Marco in Tibet. Duane Shimogawa waxing, Ethan Allen philosophizing. Here in the State of Energy, Marco in Tibet, except we don't have him on the phone anymore. We're going to try to reconnect. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Sachiko Slomov. I'm the floor manager of ThinkTech Hawaii here. You can join us on the air every weekday from 1 to 5 or off the air at thinktechhawaii.com. We stream all of our videos and all of our amazing shows at thinktechhawaii.com or on our Ustream channel. You can also check us out on Twitter at ThinkTechHI or Instagram at ThinkTechHI also. I'll be listening and I hope to see you there. Thanks.
Ted Ralston, folks, host of our show at ThinkTech Hawaii called Where the Road Leads, where we talk about technology influencing the future of Hawaii. Technology, of course, is solving problems. We always bring in interesting and informed guests who can see from different perspectives and different points of view how that future might unfold and how technology can assist us in getting there. So once again, join us 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Fridays. Ted Ralston, your host. And please, if you have ideas that you'd like us to address on this show or folks who you think should be on it, let us know.
Okay, we're back. We're here in our global connection with Duane Shimogawa here in the studio, Ethan Allen here in the studio, and Marco in Lhasa, Tibet, talking about the state of energy. So, Marco, you had something. Please continue.
Yes, I know Duane very much has his finger on the pulse on these type of things, and I wanted to get your hit, Duane, on whether you've had a chance to review much of that voluminous testimonies, plural, provided by HEI Nextera, and also whether you've had a chance to go through any of the requests for information from some of the usual parties who, in dockets like this, are typically quite active, like Henry Curtis, for example.
Mm-hmm. You know, so Hawaiian Electric and Nextera recently filed, you know, some paperwork. I think in 2 sections they have I think a 400-page docket, another 300, so total about 750 plus pages. And it was kind of their first, not so much responses, but it was kind of like, you know, rehashing what they're already saying. You know, I did get a chance to go through both of those dockets. Again, it's lacking details. You do see, again, you know, they play off of, you know, what they call the advantages of, you know, approving the acquisition. And one of the examples is that, you know, the capital expenditures that Hawaiian Electric faces in the coming years, and you know, in 2016 and 2017, you know, they said that they'll be facing $800 million each year, and so that's why they're saying that Nextera's deep pockets can help us if the merger is approved. And so it, you know, it comes down to little things like that. If there are any nuggets of information that you know, give some details, it'll be played off of, you know, this is why you should approve it. And you know, looking through all the dockets, it's all pretty much the same things over and over being rehashed. You know, Henry Curtis brings up sometimes some unrealistic types of requests, but you know, you gotta love Henry. I mean, he is truly, you know, looking out for the public, and you know, with what he's been filing. I mean, I think it's really opening the eyes to everybody, not only who's intervening, but whoever, you know, wants to go and look at, you know, the PUC's, you know, dockets and track and what's happening so far in the acquisition process.
Well, you'll be looking.
I'll be looking, yeah.
You look at PBN and follow this.
Yeah, every day. I mean, it's, you know, you see a new docket, whether it's, you know, the simple, you know, we have to sign here because, you know, this is what we can and cannot say. Then you have, you know, major responses from HECO and Nextera. Then you have, you know, the interveners slowly coming in and flying information pieces. So it's a big show, you know, and it's very interesting, and it's unfolding right before our eyes. And I encourage everybody to take a look at the dockets. It's publicly available. It's right on the PUC's website, and it's all the information's there. I mean,
but we need somebody to interpret for us. And sometimes I think that the media got together and made a little deal to have this happen, so they could sell a lot of newspapers.
Well, I'd like to, if I could, put Duane on the spot and get your prognostication, Duane, even though it's relatively early in the game. What say you in terms of whether this merger is going to be approved more or less in its current format?
Putting me on the spot, huh? as only Marco can so craftfully do. But you know, I think, you know, from what I've heard and seen, and you know, there's been a lot of opinions out there. I think in its current form, it's going to be very tough for Nextera and Hawaiian Electric to push this through. There are going to be some modifications and some stipulations where they're going to have to follow. I know for a fact, I mean, even attending some of the hearings with state lawmakers, I mean, they're grilling, you know, Alan Oshima from HECO and Eric Gleason from Nextera for more details, and if they don't give those details, it's going to be an extremely tough job, and who knows, maybe they're not willing to, and maybe they might just back out of it. Maybe they'll just try and hammer it down through people's throats. That's still to be seen, but so far, I mean, they've been holding steady, you know, and seeing them at different venues, you know, talk about what's happening, and you know, the future plans are still very, very, very vague, and a lot of people are still wondering, you know, what's really going to happen. You know, where are the details? Let's see it.
That's interesting. Nobody, you know, it is an unfair question, Marco, because nobody can really figure out where this road goes. Anything could happen. Yeah. So let's leave it to Ethan to close. Ethan, you're a fair witness. You know, what do you make of this discussion and this issue? What is your takeaway to yourself?
Well, I find it intriguing that you point out that there's already, early in the game, as you said, something like 750 pages of testimony. Now, realistically, how many members of the public are going to read through even a small fraction of that 750 pages and analyze it and interpret it? It does seem that there are people whose jobs it is, the PUC, to make these sorts of decisions, make the kinds of recommendations for how we move forward in energy matters, right? And you know, can we trust them, or is the HR resolution correct in expressing some distrust? I don't.
Well, if you know, the question really is whether Nextera feels it needs to tolerate this. Is the deal so good for them they need to tolerate, you know, both the change of the deal they made and bad process, or process that's bad to them, that's unkind to them. So far, I haven't seen anybody be unkind to Nextera. So Marco, you know, very clearly we haven't finished this conversation. I think it's necessary for you to stay in Tibet for at least 2 weeks more, where we can, gather again and continue and find out the truth of these suppositions.
No, I think that'd be great, Jay, and I'll just wish you all a very happy Aloha Friday, and it's been great as always to connect with you, and look forward to being in the studio one of these days before too long.
Okay, when are you coming back?
I'll be back the first week in May. I've still got Kathmandu, Bangkok, and Cambodia before I start heading back east to our beautiful Hawaiian Islands.
Well, speaking for all of us, our hearts go out to you with that itinerary. And we'll talk soon. Aloha.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Aloha.
Yeah.